Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very exciting day for us because we finally have Peter Tasker here to take us on a voyage unraveling the mysteries of the magician Kurosawa. And to borrow Peter's words, why Kurosawa? Because his best work is for the ages. Like an unscaled mountain range, it inspires, intimidates, and challenges. And so it has done for all these decades. And I don't know if many of you have read in the press recently that Spike Lee is collaborating with Denzel Washington and actually quite a team of up-and-coming big names to remake Kurosawa's High and Low. And what's really interesting is the story that it's based on is also has a large following. It's considered a very good novel of its genre. But all the newspapers talk about the remake of Kurosawa's High and Low. It's really interesting. And so if you have a chance, we're tracking it. We don't know when the movie's going to come out, but we are tracking it. And I'd like to just introduce our speaker tonight. The first time I heard Mr. Tasker speaking was for a very elite group of CEOs who had gathered from around the world in Tokyo, and for what we referred to as a mini Davos. It was that impressive. And there was Rupert Murdoch, the host, in the front row, nodding away as Peter spoke. You know, he wasn't going to miss a word of it. So I knew this gentleman gets paid a lot of money to dispense his wisdom. And guess what? We got him for the FCCJ. So you're getting a very good show tonight. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu. And I want to just add that in Peter's book, I'm sure some of you have read it, and be sure to get a copy before you go. Apparently Kurosawa didn't like interviews that delved into the meaning of some scenes or analysis. And in the book, he imparts with the words, "The power of film, according to the great master, resides in what could not be explained. But I guarantee that your grasp of Kurosawa will be so much the richer for hearing Peter speak tonight." So over to you, Sensei. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
Well, thank you, Mary, for that incredible build-up. I think it's been all downhill for Rupert Murdoch since then, to be frank, but can't be helped. Yeah, this is a book break, so I must give you a little commercial about the book. One thing that's very important to note is that it's getting cheaper and cheaper if you happen to be paid in US dollars. It's a real bargain now. Okay. And this book, I should just a little bit more about it. It's been widely praised for its production values. So it's more of an objet than a book. I mean, as somebody, I wrote the words, but you don't actually have to read the words. Actually, you can just sort of stroke the pages, sniff them. You know, it's really a sensuous and sensual experience. So with that, no more about that. So my title was originally Why Kurosawa Matters. And I will try to explain why I think that he is unique. There'll never be another Kurosawa, and what caused and what are the attributes that he had that enabled him to be so creative and to create so many masterpieces. But not everybody agrees with this analysis at all. I happen to see that the director of Drive My Car, who is Hamaguchi Ryusuke, he has actually downgraded Kurosawa from the trinity of the three great Japanese directors, who he puts as Mizoguchi, Ozu, and Naruse. So he's actually taken him, if using British football terminology, he's gone down, he's been relegated to out of the relegation zone. He's no longer in the Champions League. Sorry, is that okay? Can we hear? Yep. So he's been relegated from the Premier League, apparently. Of course, taste changes all the time, so we wouldn't be too surprised. On the other hand, I did note that not so long ago, a few years ago, the BBC did a poll of great films, 100 best films, which were not in the English language. And they had quite an interesting methodology for this. They had half the critics polled were women, and many of the critics were from countries that aren't usually consulted in these matters. In Africa, in the Middle East, in Central America, South America, China, the Indian subcontinent. So it wasn't just the Europeans and the Americans. It was a much broader poll than that. And the top film turned out to be Seven Samurai. And the fourth was Rashomon. So regardless of what Hamaguchi-san says, it seems to be the case that there is still quite a strong lobby for the greatness of Kurosawa. And I think particularly in some of these countries where life is hard and often dangerous, the kind of work that Kurosawa has done, where usually there's a lot at stake and people may die for their principles and that sort of thing, that kind of world is still with us, but perhaps not so much in the rich countries. It was noticeable from this poll that there was one country that each critic had the opportunity to poll to use 10 votes, and there was one country which had 3 critics, therefore 30 votes, and didn't choose a single Kurosawa film. That was, can you guess? Japan. Right? So certainly there is perhaps a lesser constituency for Japan, and I think the reasons for that, I've got a theory why that should be so, and maybe we can talk about that later. Anyway, moving on from that, I would like to, my book actually had a very nice testimonial from Stephen Okazaki, who is a film director, and he did a marvelous film, a documentary about Mifune, which is called Mifune, the Last Samurai. And in this testimonial that he gave me, it was actually, it was a very interesting statement he made. He said, Kurosawa created works of unmatched power, challenging and entertaining, far beyond what seems possible in his time and any other time. So I thought that was a very interesting observation, and he it's not that easy to be both entertaining and powerful and profound. So, you know, if we look at, for example, Drive My Car, which I saw, it was possibly profound philosophically, but entertaining, not really, no. What about the latest Tom Cruise film, Maverick, Top Gun Maverick? Well, that was very entertaining, but it would be hard to say that it was profound. So, you know, these are the different genres for different people. And you could not imagine Tom Cruise in his Maverick clothes. You couldn't imagine him quoting Chekhov. And whereas the protagonist of Drive My Car quotes Chekhov all the time, but he couldn't be in a punch them out brawl in a roadhouse. That couldn't happen. However, when you get to Kurosawa, many of these things can happen. Could we have the lights? Onegaishimasu. Red beard, onegaishimasu. So we should be able to see this clip.
また始めやがった。つら手がましい。このガキはね、最初にここを吹かせてから何かっていうとこの板の間を吹いてばかりやがる。
熱があるな。
そらみなこいつはこういうガキだ。人の恩をあだで返すつむじ曲がりさ。
ひどい熱です。この子は養生所で引き取るぞ。
冗談じゃないよ。人のものをタダで取り上げる機会。こいつ。誰か来ておくれ。
なんだ。なんだ。どうした姉さん、何かあったのか。
手のいい泥棒さ、このやぶ医者がね、病気だなんて言いがかりつけてこの子を取り上げるってんだよ。
とんでもねえ。おう。大体てめえは目障りだ。頼むしねえのにこの島へ放ち込みやがって。
さあ、とっとと失せろ。二度と来やがったらただじゃ済まねえぞ。
わしは医者だ。病人のいる限り来る。
何？変な意地張ると一生片はなるぜ。
貴様たちもよく考えろ。下手な医者の手にかかると命が危ないというではないか。わしは命は取らないが、手足の2本や3本へし折るぐらいのことはやりかねんぞ。出ろ。しゅう。先生。構うな。手出しはならんぞ。閉めろ閉めろ。この野郎。 竹蔵、その辺から板切れを10枚ほど探してこい。安本、手当てをしてやれ。はい。板が来たら折れたところに添え木を当てて布を巻くんだ。少しやりすぎたようだな。もう少し加減をすればよかった。これはひどい。こんな乱暴は良くない。医者ともある者がこういうことをしてはいけない。
So this is basically the same as a entertaining. You've got entertainment, and you've got thrills and spills, and you've got profundity in this film, and it's got quite a wide range in it. The original story of Red Beard is created by a writer called Yamamoto Shugoro, who's a very interesting guy. Perhaps we can talk about him a little bit later. But that wasn't enough for Kurosawa, so he spliced in a story from Dostoevsky, which is called Humiliated and Insulted. It's not very well known in the West. It's one of the early Dostoevsky stories. And then he interpolated this little bit of sort of Bruce Lee kind of action as well. So that can be put together in one great whole to make this film. And there's no sense of it being unfitting. You can have, as Stephen Okazaki said, you can have things that are exciting and also profound in these films at that time, and that is what the public at that time wanted. So that was the point I wanted to make of the kind of genre that Kurosawa was dealing with. There's profundity, and there's excitement and thrills and spills. The greatness of Kurosawa, I think, comes from three particular elements. One is his extraordinary literary sensibility. The second is his extraordinary visual sensibility. And last of all, I would say it's his themes that, in a sense, he was the right man in the right place to reflect these themes of the world as it developed during his lifetime, starting in 1910. And so Kurosawa didn't go to university, but he was extremely well read. And I've got this quote from him here, where he says, "In order to write scripts, you must first study the great novels and dramas of the world. You must consider why they are great." So he was considering all kinds of dramas. He didn't really discriminate between Japanese and foreign dramas and books. As you can see, he in that Redbeard is basically a Japanese novel. He starts with, but he uses many other things as well. What did he consider to be great literature? Well, NHK did a program interviewing him in 1981, and he mentioned in particular 4 works that he considered great. One was War and Peace, which he said, hard to believe, he said that he'd read it 30 times. It's amazing he had any time left to direct films, but he did. But the second, they're not in a particular order, was The Idiot. And he said there, the scene after Roger Zing has killed Nastasia is perhaps the greatest scene in world literature. And he had 2 Japanese works, The Tale of the Heike, and the one is the odd one out is Sanshiro by Soseki. So that is a bit. Sanshiro is a bit of an odd man out because it's not about great events, great and terrible events, murder and madness, like the rest of his stories. It's quite amusing character study. But I think that Kurosawa had a soft spot for Soseki. He used Soseki's 10 Nights of Dream as a template for his own film, Dreams, which came out in 1990. And he used, I have seen these dreams, konna yume o mita. He used that line, which comes from the Soseki book. But the point is that Kurosawa inhabited a world where literature was very important. And particularly, you could say that in the early years, Russian literature was very important. In the 100 years from the opening of Japan, so that's from 1850 to 1950 basically, the foreign authors who were the top 10 to be translated were 5 of them were Russian, and the top of all, who was translated 2,600 times, was Tolstoy. So Japan really, for many years, if you're talking about foreign literature, you're talking about Russian literature. And there is an academic at Chicago University who's done some very good work on this subject. I'm just going to try and pronounce her name correctly. Olga Solovieva. Is that right? Okay. More or less. Anyway, she's done some fantastic work and has written a book which is called The Russian Kurosawa. Excellent stuff. What I got out of that book in particular was that The Idiot, which is one of the few failed films of Kurosawa, it was the studio found that it was much too long, and therefore they cut it in an extremely brutal way, which made no sense, and put in loads of intertitles. So it's very hard to understand what the hell is going on in this film. And the original film has been lost, so nobody can sort of really see what it was like. But from what you can see, if you look through all the annoying things that the studio has put in, you can see it would have been an absolute masterpiece with fantastic acting by the principals and a very interesting backstory. I don't know if any of you know the original Dostoevsky's original Prince Mishkin. He's called Kameda in this film, in Kurosawa's The Idiot, and he's been a soldier, a combatant in the Battle of Okinawa. And what happened to him was that he was he was put in front of a firing squad. That actually happened to Dostoevsky, of course. At the last moment, he was reprieved because it was a case of mistaken identity. But the experience made him lose his senses, and he ended up in a mental home in Okinawa, presumably under US rule at that time. And then finally he gets back to his home in Hokkaido. So it's an absolutely fantastic premise. And the murder scene, which in fact Kurosawa said is the greatest scene in world literature, the murder scene is absolutely incredible. So that is where the sort of Russian element very much came to the fore in Kurosawa's consciousness. But I don't, as I said, I don't think it was just Kurosawa who was sort of a Russian literature nut. I think it was at that time that was commonplace for people who loved literature and were hungry for it. That's where they went. Okay, so Kurosawa is his films are nearly all adapted from books. Some of them are like Ed McBain, as you mentioned, for High and Low. So they're not all high literature by any means, but there are quite a few of them are. And he's willing to take on Shakespeare, Dostoevsky, without any problem, and also to kind of change in quite significant ways these masterpieces. So Macbeth, as seen by Kurosawa in The Throne of Blood, is a totally different atmosphere, totally different scene from Shakespeare's Macbeth. In particular, in the Shakespearean version, the king who's murdered by Macbeth is a noble, wise, old, gentle person, and murdering him is a heinous crime. Under the Kurosawa version, it's quite different. The king, Duncan, is actually also a psycho and has killed many, many people himself. And what he gets is essentially karma. And that's the same also with Kurosawa's interpretation of King Lear, Ran. The Hidetora, who is the King Lear figure, is also a psycho who has basically exterminated the entire clan of his rival. So it's what goes around comes around. It's a totally different thinking from Shakespeare, who was actually extremely conservative person, having and wanted to see kingship established without any problem in England, having seen the Wars of the Roses and all the chaos and murder that happened in those years. So very, very different. I don't know if any of you have read Kurosawa's autobiography. It's very interesting. He's a born storyteller. And it reminded me a bit of Bob Dylan's Chronicles, which is his own memoir that he published about 15 years ago. And the Dylan memoir contains stories of people and places that never existed. And, well, Kurosawa's autobiography is not as fictional as that, but it's pretty fictional. He makes his brother and his father into heroes. And well, after the earthquake, his brother takes him by the hand and makes him go and see with his eyes open the scenes of death and destruction. And his brother is this incredible, bold guy who will do anything, his elder brother. Well, in fact, as Evia, sorry, I can never get that one right. As she notes in her book, actually, what we know of Kurosawa's elder brother, he did commit suicide after several previous attempts. He was quite a dark figure, and he lived with a very young girl in a kind of slum-type place, and he kept impregnating her, but they had no money, so they couldn't have any children. And in the end, he committed suicide, double suicide, with another woman, and that was the end of him. And because he was considered to be the guy, he was the elder son who was responsible for supporting the family. Now he was gone. Because of that, Kurosawa had to get a proper job, and he did that, going to a company which had as a sideline a movie business. So that's the story of the kind of literary background to Kurosawa, the person. And also, now I'd like to move on to the visual, the visual sensibility that he had. He did want to be a painter before he became went into the film industry. And he, interestingly, he was one of the last of the directors in Japan to use color. Ozu made his first color film in 1958. Kurosawa made his in 1970. Why? Because he felt that the color as it was, Technicolor in those days, as it was simply not good enough. And the black and white was far superior in terms of the dynamism that it gave you. And it was only when the improvements had been made that he thought, okay, now I will go through, I will use color. So I've got, you may be wondering why I'm wearing this shirt, by the way. There's rhyme behind the madness here. So this is a comment from a artist called Yoko Tadanori. Some of you may well know him. He's famous for his graphic design and posters in particular, bit of a countercultural figure in his day. He's still around. This is what he said. I'm supposed to be a professional artist, but I never trained in painting from the imagination. So when I draw, I need to look at objects or materials in order to produce anything. Kurosawa, get closer to the mic. Yeah, okay, got it. Kurosawa, without looking at anything, moves his brush at high speed and captures the expressions, clothes, and gestures of his characters as if sketching from life. It would make any professional go pale. It's as if he has already shot the movie in his head. So that's praise for his skills. Here, let's see, yeah. After that, we have this is another comment from Yoko-san. Covering the longest walk in the studio was an abstract painting with crazed colors. In front of it, the ground buckled as if it had been hit by a wave. Kurosawa explained to me that this was the place where Tatsuya Nakadai, playing the title role in Kagemusha, would wander in his dreams after losing his sanity. The painting, I heard, was done by Kurosawa himself. It was a more expressionist version of the sky and water in Munch's The Scream. Could we have the clip for Kagemusha, please? No. Sorry. Robert, can we... ちょっと待って、止まってください。すいません。Yeah. Okay. すいません。ライトお願いします。I'm going to say this in the dark. Yeah, this is actually the clip that I called wife swapping. And this is a clip from Do Desu Ka Den, which is the first color picture that Kurosawa did. And again, he did the scenery himself and painted it himself for this. The original story is again by Yamamoto Shugoro, and it's about a town which is a bit of a slum, basically. But the way that Kurosawa uses color in this film makes it totally different. It's very surreal now, and it looks like something out of Fellini. it's sort of almost magical realism. So having been quite a sort of tough, gritty story in the original, just by changing the color coding for his first color film, and here you will see some characters in these colors, completely changes the atmosphere of the film. Sorry, すみませんでした。はい。Okay, well. Yeah, thank you. Could we go back to the, すみません、その前のやつが出てくるんですか？
何しやんのね。しょうがねえ。しょうがねえよ。女ってもらえはね。しょうがねえもんだ。しょうがねえもんだ。とはよ。暇を持て余してっから、何でもねえことを何とかこじらして楽しもうとしてやんだよ。そうだな。よし、俺行ってよ。よく話してきて。そうか？
およしよ、あんた酔ってんだからさ。
べけえで。これぐらいの酒で酔ってても歩けってんだよ。何？けどな、今行くのね、やめてよ。行ってやれって。いいよ、行くことはねえよ。行ってやれよ、おい。やめとけよ。
およし来たらおよしよ。
およしよ。おい、大丈夫。うるせえよ。うるさいよ。大丈夫か？大丈夫行ってきたよ、なんか。
大丈夫か？
あれ、行ってくれよ。
行っちまったよ。私も一杯いただくわ。お酌してくださいよ。
いただくわとこだったな。よし。よし。よし。ほら、手まで酔っちまってよな。それ。
みんなこぼしちまうじゃないのさ。
すまねえ。すまねえな。おめえ、ハツさんとこのおよっさんじゃねえか。こいつは大きな驚きだぜ。胸が妙な具合になってきやん。 けどコトンとも音がしねえ。あれ？
どら私が見てあげるよ。ちゃんとドッキンドッキンって打ってるじゃないの。私の手を跳ね返しそうだわよ。
だわよとこだったな。おめえのはどうだ？
自分で触ってごらんよ。
自分でか？めんどくせえや。おい心臓なんてくたばっちまえよ。
同じよ。乱暴。
Okay, stop there. All right. So that was color coded, and the whole town in that film are color coded. So that's a sort of a huge advance. It was the first color film that Kurosawa made, and he did not use the color just for random purposes. It was very carefully designated for the characters. So he did when the color technology was of sufficient sophistication, he was willing to use it, and he did very well and in a very subtle way. So the last element, I think, in the Kurosawa's greatness that makes him unique is his experience as a human being in the first part of the 20th century. And let's see if I can find my piece here. Hang about. Excuse me, I've slightly lost my track here. Where's it gone? 10 and 11. No, excuse me a minute. It's just too. Here we are. Okay, sorry about that. So this is a comment made by Andrei Konchalevsky, who is of Russian, in fact, Soviet filmmaker, worked with Tarkovsky before defecting to the West. And he said about Kurosawa, he knew how low the human animal can go, how many flaws and shortcomings it has. He accepts this human animal without idealizing it. So he has a somewhat pessimistic view of human beings, and here's, according to that comment, and here's a similar comment by Hashimoto Shinobu, who is a great collaborator with Kurosawa, and many of the great films he was involved in the scripts for them. He says, all 30 films are connected at a higher level and have a consistent theme, which is, there are no good people in this world, but no evil people either. Everyone lives burdened by good and evil. So that's the kind of view of humankind that I think he would have adopted, having seen all the things that happened globally and in Japan throughout the 20th century, particularly the first half of it. So now I would like to end with the final clip, but this one I think sort of sums up. It was again, this is from Dreams, which was made in 1990. So, you know, a long time before, after the events detailed in this little clip took place. But it was still on his mind, on Kurosawa's mind, really just, what was that, 7 years before his death. So let's have a look at that one. Onegaishimasu.
正体、ただいま帰りました。全員以上です。聞いてくれ。お前たちの気持ちはよくわかる。しかし第三小隊は全滅した。お前たちは全員戦死したのだ。すまん。生き残ったわしはお前たちに合わす顔もない。お前たちを全滅させたのはこのわしの責任だ。わしは全ての責任を戦争の不条理と軍律の非人間性に転化して自分の無定見と過ちを認める卑怯者ではない。しかし生きながらえて捕虜となったわしはその抑留生活で死ぬ苦しみを味わった。そして今またお前たちを見て同じ苦しみをなめている。いや、お前たちは
自分たちの苦しみに比べてそんな苦しみは何だというだろう。しかし正直に言う。わしはお前たちと一緒に死にたかった。このわしの気持ちを信じてくれ。お前たちの無念な気持ちはよーくわかる。戦士とはいえ命にだ。しかしそのようにこの世をさまよって何になる。頼む、帰れ。
Yeah. Okay. Well, at that point, I think it's probably a good point to stop there. Do you think so?
I can see the questions in their eyes. So, yes, we must.
Yeah.
You can speak a little longer.
No, that I think that will do. Yeah.
Hold to the mic. Might be easier for you to hold to the mic.
Can't you hold them?
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Now that we've finished, no. Yes. Okay.
John?
We're going to move
Yeah.
into the Q&A. Then one at a time, if you can take microphone at the either end, and please say your name. This is being recorded. じゃあ最初どうぞ. And then second. Okay.
Thank you very much, Peter. John Alkire. I have no affiliation other than to myself. I would submit that obviously Kurosawa, a phenomenal director, but without Mifune, a bit like metal without alloy. And so my question is to you is that if there was no Mifune, would there be a Kurosawa?
Yeah. Well. That's a difficult one because they were sort of such a combination through that great period right up to Red Beard, and after that, Mifune's career sort of sputtered. He made some decent films, but quite a lot of lousy ones, and so did Kurosawa's career too. Do Desu ka Den was not at all successful, and he himself attempted suicide because if he couldn't make any films, he didn't see any point in existing. However, he did come back with Kagemusha and Ran with two fantastic epics. And he could have chosen Mifune for those, but he didn't. He chose Nakadai Tatsuya instead. And that's interesting. We don't know why he did that. But I think that it worked out well. I think those two films are absolutely stunning. And he also managed to create a kind of film that at that time TV could not handle. So it kept film going in the classical sense. So I think the brilliance of Mifune is undisputable, and he was, really irreplaceable in those films that he was in. But Kurosawa then did choose to replace him in the second part of his career, and I think maybe it was that Mifune was getting a bit old to play the tough guy, and he was a heavy drinker, as you suggest, as well. He had women problems. So I think all of that sort of conspired to sort of end that relationship, which therefore ended. But great films came, and many great films came from them in that period. From the Drunken Angel onwards to Red Beard. So who knows what could have happened? But I think he did. Those last two epics showed that he could do it on his own. And Nakadai Tatsuya is also a fantastic actor, different, of course. And he's also in Sanjuro and a few other. And he's the guy with the gun in Yojimbo as well. So, he's also a fantastic actor.
Sure, yeah.
Daniel Manning, Japan Forward. I suppose you might consider Kurosawa to Japanese cinema what James Joyce is to Irish literature, like a monumental force of the medium, but a shadow that's very difficult to step out of for all who follow. In that sense, how would you rate post-Kurosawa Japanese cinema? I think you might have hinted at this with your comments on Hamaguchi earlier, but do you think it's lived up to Kurosawa's legacy, or do you think it's fallen?
Well, I think it's almost impossible to. Oh, let me get this thing in the right place. It's almost impossible to live up to that legacy. It's a good question, with Shakespeare, 80 years after his death, he wasn't rated particularly high. It was after that people said, there were other dramatists like Beaumont and Fletcher, who were also roughly the same period as Shakespeare, but they were very, very popular in Restoration England. So that's in 80 years after the death of Shakespeare. But it was in the centuries after that they got completely forgotten, and now Shakespeare is played all over the world. So I think it's quite, reputations are fickle, and they depend on the social conditions changing. I personally, there was an attempt to do ikiru living in Britain, and it had Kazuo Ishiguro doing the script, and Bill Nighy, who's like a very much loved actor in Britain, and he did that, and I thought it was very flat. It didn't really work for me. And they have a sort of a night out in Brighton in 1955. I mean, it's not, and compared to the Ginza in Ikiru, I mean, there's no question. There's no competition. So it was very flat, and I thought it became a sort of a character study, which Ishiguro is very good at. And so, but it's not telling us what we should do with our lives now. What are you doing on this planet? What are you here for? Have you got any kind of reason to be here? that sort of story, which comes straight from Tolstoy, by the way, so that's why it's so powerful. So that didn't really work for me. I haven't really caught up with. I did see Drive My Car, but I'm not going to comment on it here. But I haven't really caught. There's also Kaibutsu, which came out, Koreeda, which is kind of a take on Rashomon in a way, but it's not as radical. And maybe part of that is because you don't have Mifune in it, actually. You've got cute kids. They're much too cute. So that's, cute kids. Everybody's so nice. Everybody's so nice in his films. You see, there's no nasty people. You're not dealing with evil, like Hashimoto said. How you're burdened with evil. No, you're not burdened with anything. So I feel that you don't have the power and the greatness that comes from the literature, and then that's being translated into fantastic films by Kurosawa and the others of that era, by the way. It's if we think about what the world was like then, there's no social media, there's no TV. People might go to the cinema once a week. They might go on kabuki or something like that for a treat, but they wouldn't have a huge amount of money. They would be reading a lot, and maybe that's why you could perhaps read War and Peace 30 times. Yeah.
Mark-san,
Mark Robinson, freelancer. First of all, your book, which I bought some time ago at the launch.
Well done.
You spoke about the production values, and it's certainly beautiful. But also, I think it's really unique, and it's well outside any kind of film criticism or academic work, and it's a deeply personal, but also a kind of a story in itself. It's got a sort of a crime writer's voice in places, and the way you've put it together in this such a fragmentary way, but still managed to make it hold together, I think is really wonderful. But tell me how you came to think of this treatment.
Good question. I can hardly remember, but it was an idea that I had, and I thought it would be nice to write in a sort of non-structured way about the subject. And Kurosawa, who I admired for a long, long time, but there were quite a few of his films I hadn't seen. And what I found was that even the films that are not well known and are perhaps not as the classics by any means, they're all still very interesting. There's a lot to talk about and think about in them. Whereas someone like Ozu, who's obviously a fantastic film director, his films, I didn't find there's so much to say about them, apart from the fact, wow, that's a fantastic film, but that's not really helping anybody. So I found that Kurosawa, there's a lot to talk about him personally, and his character as well. He's a very interesting guy, and has been through sort of several iterations of himself. Again, the fact that in Japan, people they almost seem to have had enough of him, whereas in the rest of the world, he's going to, from strength to strength, as you said. He's Spike Lee, for example. Well, what a fantastic idea that could be. Who knows what it's going to be like, but it's really unusual idea there. So. There's something about his work that does attract a lot of people, and I just thought I I've got a lot to say here, but in a sort of unstructured way to sort of go around him, not as a sort of film critic would do, because there are sort of fantastic film critics who do that job already and have done it very well. So I wanted to do something a little bit different.
Okay, we don't have much time, so first you, and then the gentleman in the back. Oh, so you go for yes. Sorry, and your name, please.
Hi, my name is Dominic Henderson, old mate. Maybe I'm giving away my traditional English background, and perhaps you've already answered part of my question when you referred to evil. But I wanted to know why you think Kurosawa insisted on making Leah and Duncan the characters that he did, or Leah and Duncan characters as sort of nasty as he did.
Yes, yes. Well, I think they are burdened by evil, as Hashimoto said, though they're not necessarily evil themselves, but they are dealing with evil and do evil things. And that is probably quite realistic as to what things were like back then, I think. And you would have to, if you had a clan and your clan was at odds with another clan, and it was a bad scene, then you'd basically have to exterminate the lot of them. I mean, you just had to do it. I mean, it's, as they say in The Godfather, it's nothing personal. It's just business. You can't allow them to continue. Otherwise, they'll get back at you. So I think that's where that comes from. And actually, I thought that the Macbeth of Kurosawa is closer to Holinshed's Chronicles, where Shakespeare got the story from, than from Shakespeare. So that's they are a series of bloodthirsty guys who were struggling to be the man, and every now and again one would get there and then he'd be chopped, and that was what it was like. But Shakespeare came in with an ideology to say, we can't have this anymore, because if you just carry on like that, then you just have no justice, no culture. You just have death and blood and conflict forever. So that's where Shakespeare came in, and Holinshed up there in Scotland, he just saw what it was like. He just transcribed it. This guy chopped this guy, and this guy chopped this guy. So that's the way it went down.
Your friend?
Yes.
I asked this question the last time at the launch, but I'm afraid I have to repeat it. By way of apologizing for the Japanese low appreciation, as you see it, of Kurosawa, Ozu makes me feel very homesick for Japan. Every time I see his film, it makes me feel very homesick.
Yeah.
Kurosawa doesn't.
Yeah.
Kurosawa, I see the Japanese samurai, I see the story, I see Mifune, but they seem to be a story from anywhere, and it is. It's a Shakespeare, it's Ed McBain.
Yes.
I sometimes feel that Kurosawa is like a Shohei Ohtani. Shohei Ohtani is another Japanese baseball player. He's a baseball player, but happens to be Japanese.
Yeah.
Kurosawa is not a Japanese filmmaker, but he's a filmmaker who happens to be Japanese. Having seen Perfect Days yesterday and seeing Wim Wenders trying to out-Japanese Japanese filmmakers, do you think filmmaking as an art form has become too parochial?
Well, that's a fantastic comments you made there. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think Actually, in reality, when he made those films, though he got prizes for them, his main audience would have been the Japanese audience. We're talking about the 50s and the 60s. And many of the films that he made were not shown even in the States or the UK really until the 70s. You could hardly get to see them. So I think that he was making films, though obviously he was very happy to get these prizes. He was making them for his domestic audience, and he was also, I think, this is I don't know if he did this deliberately, but he created this concept of the samurai, not the samurai who's a sort of bureaucrat in the Edo era, but in the Warring States era, and he's a ronin, and he can do what he wants. So he's like a gunslinger in the West. And this allowed him to legitimize violence and swordplay, which otherwise, would have been in the sort of pacifist era of post-war Japan. You would say, well, the samurai, this is bad stuff. This is militarism, blah blah blah. But he found a way of where we can actually cheer for the Mifune chopping up, several people, because he's doing it through his own choice, not because somebody told him that he had to do it. And that goes with the Seven Samurai all the way up to Sanjuro. So it's, he created this figure who's basically his own man, does what he wants, he picks his quarrels, and he does it because sometimes he thinks it's the right thing to do, or sometimes he just throws a piece of wood in the air and says, well, I think I'll go for these guys. So, yeah. So I don't know if I've answered your questions, but
well, we come to the ceremony part of the evening, because we are very proud to welcome you as our honored guest member for the coming year. 今日はどうもありがとうございました。ありがとうございました。Parting comment?
Well, it was fun, and I hope that it made some sense, and people will go back to the films and take a look at them,
I think we will.
And buy my book.
Yes. Thank you very much. And yes, I want to remind you that there are still books at the front desk. どうもありがとうございました。